Well, many of you were not a fan of Chris Phillips' SEC preseason quarterback rankings. Let's see if you like my quarterback power tiers instead. What's going on, SEC Unfiltered? It's Cole Thompson here. Make sure that you like the video. Hit the ring notification down below because we're talking SEC football leading up to week 1, 4 weeks away. And now we are going to be back in action. Make sure that also you're following us on all the social channels, TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, at SEC Unfiltered. Download the podcast version of the show, wherever you get your podcast listening systems. Leave a 5-star review if you love this type of content, a 1-star review if you hate this type of content. Follow me on social media at Mr. Cole Thompson. And to keep up with the #1 source for all things SEC, visit SECUnfiltered.com. This episode is brought to you by Rhoback. Use promo code SECU for 20% off all joggers, polos, hoodies, shorts, much, much more. Look good, feel good this upcoming fall on game days with Rhoback, promo code SECU. So there is a giant difference between power ratings and power rankings. Let's say it together. Rankings is where I will put you 16-1, which I am not doing. Tier ratings is where I have you listed among the others in your peers. I have 7 tiers on this list, 7 different groups that are going to separate these quarterbacks. So now that we're on the same page, let's begin. It's going from the very bottom all the way to the very top. And yes, at the very top, I have one guy sitting in that tier. But for starters, let's begin with the I don't know, and neither do you. Now, what exactly does this mean? Well, they barely played. Since joining their school, they have barely seen the field. Also, on top of that, we're mostly going based off of their high school rankings or what they did in the spring football game or what they did in the bowl game. So you don't know. You have no idea what they're going to be. Yeah, the hype is around them. I get it. You believe that they're going to be a really talented player, but you don't know. I don't know, and neither do you. Let's start off with the first one, Nico Iamaleava from Tennessee. Nico's got all the skills that you want in a difference maker at quarterback. I will not be shocked by the season's end if he is hoisting up a Heisman Trophy, if he is a big reason why Tennessee is fighting their spot in the college football playoff. If the entire enigma around Tennessee has drastically changed, I personally believe that the Vols are one of those teams that because of the NIL collective, what we've seen over the last few years, how they're recruiting right now, getting ahead of the curve, they're going to be a player for the long haul in the new era of the SEC. But they might already be one step further if Nico lives up to expectations. But also, let's temper our thoughts right now. This is a guy that has only played one meaningful game of college football, and it was in a bowl game against a very tedious, but also still limited defensive backfield of Iowa. I want to see him do it for 13 games. So give him some time to build that relationship, build that chemistry, build that dynamics with the wide receivers in Knoxville, because there could be something very special there. And the same thing goes with Jaxson Arnold down at Norman. You could basically do a 180 flip when it comes to Jaxson Arnold and Nico Iamaleava for the bowl game. Everybody was about ready to crown Nico the next Peyton Manning, the next T. Martin, the greatest thing to walk through Knoxville in over 2 decades. And then you have Oklahoma fans, not all Oklahoma fans, but some that will say that was an egregious performance. How are we going to replace Dillon Gabriel with that kid? Guys, this is a 5-star talent. He absolutely has a cannon of an arm. You go back and you watch the spring game. He has shown you the consistency of what you want, building that relationship with guys like Deion Burks. Now you get Nick Anderson, who, again, in the bowl game against Arizona, caught a touchdown pass inside the red zone. Good size, good physicality. The offensive line will come around. But there is so much excitement in Norman because you got your guy. You got a guy that's going to fit with Seth Littrell. And you got a guy that can actually be one of the best in college football. Don't look now, but this time next season, we may be talking about these 2 quarterbacks as the faces of the SEC. Or maybe we talk about LaNorris Sellers at South Carolina. He's also in the I don't know and neither do you list. Because, again, we don't know what he is. Yeah, he wears rec specs. Yeah, he's got the mobility. And yes, he's won the starting job without actually playing a meaningful down of college football. But what do the wide receivers look like? When you look at the situations that everyone is going into, Nico is in a great situation. I would say that Jaxson Arnold's in a good situation. And then you have the unknown abyss that is Columbia, South Carolina. We don't know what we're going to see out with LaNorris Sellers. But I do believe that the talent is there. I do believe that he is more than a one-trick pony. I do believe he is a superstar and one of the biggest and brightest names in the industry. So don't be shocked now if you go ahead and see him actually hit his stride at the right time. And last and certainly not least, Brock Vandagriff. The arm is there. The talent is there. The mobility is there. Everything that we're hearing coming out of training camp right now or out of spring football, now going into fall camp, There's a lot to like about this kid. And I won't be shocked if he ends up breaking barriers and showing the world that, yes, I was as talented as a guy like Carson Beck. You got to remember, this time last year, we were in the middle of a conversation with quarterback battles, and everyone was saying, yeah, Carson Beck's got the lead, but don't look now. We still have a very talented playmaker by the name of Brock Vandagriff. Well, now he's in Lexington, and the multiverse might exist. Every 3 years, we see Mark Stoops get to 10 wins with a transfer portal quarterback and a brand new offensive coordinator. It feels like history is repeating itself. Plus, you also have Jamori Macklin, Dane Key, Barry and Brown, really talented wide receivers that are going to elevate the up-tempo attack. So I'm excited to see what this version of Brock Vandagriff is. Next category, welcome to the SEC. Basically, you're new to the SEC. You transferred on in. You started elsewhere. You had a good run. Now you're here. Let's start off with Diego Pavia at Vanderbilt. Pavia beat Auburn last year. That's his calling card. And he also did a damn good job in that game. 3 touchdowns, a completion percentage around 68%, a little over 200 passing yards. Also ran in a touchdown. He's got the mobility. He's got the ability to extend plays outside the pocket. He also, I think, is going to be going into a system that is very well catered to his strengths, because who's the offensive coordinator in Nashville now? It's Tim Beck, who last season helped guide the Aggies to a Conference USA appearance. So I really like the situation that Pavia is going into. That doesn't mean that he is going to be the best quarterback, but he is new to the SEC. He has the experience, and he has a relationship with the current offensive coordinator. So if you get that version of him that went into Jordan-Hare to play against teams that are going to be as good, if not better than Auburn, you may end up pulling out an upset or two. I'm just saying, don't look now, but there is a lot of reasons to believe in the Commodores quarterback. Not the Commodores, but the quarterback. And I can say the same thing about Taylen Green. Taylen Green from Arkansas, if you haven't spent any time, go at 3 in the morning and just watch on YouTube highlights. The Boise State Bronco was bucking and bruising his way to a Mountain West Conference title. He was great last year. He's 6'6". He looks like the Slender Man. I really hope that in Fayetteville they'll call him the Slender Man, because if he is just moving and grooving and like no one's business, he is such a talented player when it comes to the arm strength and the accuracy. That mobility is really sneaky, and he's working with the quarterback godfather. There is not a better person to get the best version out of a quarterback in the SEC that we know now than Bobby Petrino. Now, that does not mean that Bobby Petrino was going to be right back in Arkansas on the sidelines calling plays as the next head coach in place of Sam Pittman. That doesn't mean that Taylen Green's going to lead this team back to what we knew in 2011 when it seemed like everything was turning the corner for the Hawks. But this is a good relationship. He already has shown you that he can win against quality competition. So now the question is, can he win in the SEC with the new offensive identity? And last but certainly not least, in my opinion, the best quarterback head coach combo of the trio, it's Blake Shapen and it's Jeff Lebby. Shapen, many people are going to turn to and say, well, we don't really know much about him because of how his season ended in Waco. But if you go back and you remember that bowl game performance, you go back and you remember his Big 12 championship performance, not bowl game, my apologies, Big 12 championship performance, comes on in for Jerry Bohannon. First game, last game of the regular season in Arlington against Oklahoma State, a team that at this point seemed destined to just coast by and punch their ticket to a college football playoff. My man did not drop the football once. It was literally in the dome, in the pocket, in the cradle of the arms of his receiver, every single play. Set a Big 12 record for the most consistent completions in a conference championship game. And he's got the arm strength. When you look at just straight vertical passing down the field, which is exactly what style of offense they want to run with Jeff Lebby, there has not been a better quarterback to walk through Starkville in this atmosphere since Dak Prescott. Now, that does not mean that the personnel around him is going to be great. That doesn't mean that he is going to end up having monumental numbers, and Mississippi State's going to be right back to where they were when Dan Mullen was on the sidelines. But from a coaching standpoint, for the up-tempo, go-go offense, vertical style passing downfield with the veer option in the backfield, the way that Jeff Lebby wants to run it, Shapen is a talented quarterback. And in my opinion, this was the ideal situation that you want to put him in. If you throw him in Gainesville, he's not going to work. If you throw him in Fayetteville, it may come with some trials and tribulations. But you throw him in Stark Vegas, you may be hitting the jackpot very sooner rather than later. Next category, are you him? One person. Are you him? Everyone's believing in you. This is a year where things are going to look better. This is a year where you say, whoa, maybe you are something. Many of you know where I'm going with this one. It's Payton Thorne. Payton Thorne is one of those quarterbacks to where I want to believe he can be better than what we saw last year. But I also want to give him the benefit of the doubt. Not everybody is blessed with first-round wide receivers and top 15 picks like Ohio State, Washington, Oregon, like all those other talented playmakers that we've seen for years on end come into the NFL and eventually thrive. But they did upgrade this offseason. They got a lot better in so many different categories. Let's start off with the fact that Cam Coleman has come on in. Let's start with the fact that Keandre Lambert-Smith, who has 11 career touchdowns as the #1 receiver of Penn State, has come on in. Let's talk about potentially a guy like Robert Lewis, over 1,300 career receiving yards, 14 touchdowns during his tenure at Georgia State. There are playmakers here. And you also have Perry Thompson, and you also have Rivaldo Fairweather, and you also have an offensive play caller in Hugh Freeze that handpicked you to remain the #1 QB. They didn't go out. They vetted for you. They said that you were the guy, and you're still holding off those who are waiting in the wings. So there's a lot to like when we talk about the future of Auburn. But are you the guy? It's like that movie Spy Kids 3. Everyone remember when everyone's like, who's the guy? Who's the guy? Who's the guy? I'm the guy. I'm the guy. Are you the guy, Payton Thorne? That's really all this comes down to. Next up, Raising Cane's. Now let me explain this one. Every person is going to have their favorite fast food joint. Every person is going to love wherever they are in life about what they enjoy. Maybe it's McDonald's. Maybe you're a Taco Bell person. Me personally, I absolutely love Jersey Mike's. I will gladly go to Jersey Mike's, wait in line, and pay that price for that type of sandwich. But I think most people would say, you know what? We're okay with Cane's. Could be better. Could be worse. But we're okay with Cane's. 3 quarterbacks fall in this category for me. For starters, it's Connor Weigman. Connor Weigman, the analogy that he can't stay healthy, say it with you people, is a joke. Because he's been hurt one time since his high school days where he was a dual sport athlete and nearly got drafted by Major League Baseball. He has always been able to stay the course. And when he's been on the field in 8 games over the last 2 years, he has a 16-2 touchdown to interception ratio. And by the way, this is with 2 different offensive play callers. They have a good run game headlined by Le'Veon Moss and Ruben Owens. They have some very good, unproven, but still good wide receivers. They get back their starting tight end. They also have a very studious and stout offensive line that is no longer going to be under the mercy of Steve Adazio's teachings. They have a good defense. The question turns to, can this offensive play calling from Colin Klein that loves to run a lot of options, loves to have mobile quarterbacks, can it hold together for a guy like Connor Weigman? Because if so, A&M might actually be here. A&M is not going to be one of those programs that's rebuilding overnight or just taking a year off. No, they want to be here and now, year one. They want to be able to say, hey, Notre Dame was just the start. We're coming for you, Texas. We're coming for you, Florida. We're coming for every other team out there. And speaking of Florida, Graham Mertz has got to be on this list. When you talk about Graham Mertz, so many people want to turn to last season, what the narrative was around him. And then we talk about the narrative for this season with Florida. Everyone wants to believe that it's just not going to work. Well, the one blessing in disguise from last season was Graham Mertz did work for Billy Napier. He had only 3 interceptions after throwing a ton during his tenure in Wisconsin. He had one of the highest passer ratings in college football. His completion percentage was through the roof, but that passer rating being top 10, that's something that you have when you're a great playmaker. And he didn't have elite stars last year. Trey Wilson was coming into his own. He had Ricky Pearsall. He was missing that third receiver. That's not the case this year. He's got some dudes. He's got Elijah Badger coming on over from Arizona State. Trey Wilson is, I think, in my opinion, about to pop off as the next household name in the SEC. Shamir DK comes on over from Wisconsin. They had a great relationship in Madison. He's got a running game headlined by Montrell Johnson. I think the offensive line is going to be a little bit more stable. It's also year 2 in the system. Can you build off of that? Because if so, we're talking about Graham Mertz as a quarterback that maybe isn't the most well-liked. He's kind of like, as I say, mashed potatoes. It's a good side dish. Nobody hates that side dish. Maybe not your favorite, but you definitely would be okay with having it every single night for at least a week. There are worse things out there than having Graham Mertz as your starting quarterback. And lastly, I have Garrett Nussmeier on this list. Now, Nuss still could have fallen in either category of I don't know, and neither do you, or Raising Cane's. And the reason why I put him in Raising Cane's is because of at least I've seen him play on the big stage. He's played in over 14 games during his tenure in LSU, but he's also played in two of the biggest games. Even though he was playing catch-up against Georgia in the SEC championship game, he balled out. He's got a deep ball. He's got a cannon of an arm. He's got great footwork. He's got superstar mechanics. He fits the mold of a leader in the locker room. The way he speaks, it's like Leonidas getting everybody ready to go ahead and take on the Trojans in the Spartan War. We know that 300 might be small, but we're mighty and proud. Can you build that relationship with CJ Daniels? Can you build that relationship with Kyron Lacey? Can Xavier Thomas step on up? Can you be able to move outside the pocket if in a pinch? Can you utilize your legs to an advantage? Maybe not Jaden Daniels level, but still pretty damn good. If so, this might be the dark horse to win the Heisman Trophy. Honestly, when you think about it, when all the numbers say otherwise, how do you not put him at least in the conversation? Especially if what we saw last season toward the end in the bowl game ends up translating on over. Next category. This is the Larry David category. Now, why do I name this category Larry David? Everybody knows Curb Your Enthusiasm. Everybody knows the favorite show, the really best show by Larry David. Sorry, Seinfeld fans. I don't care. You can argue with me in the comment section. What's the most famous line from Curb Your Enthusiasm? It's pretty good. These are pretty good quarterbacks. These are guys that you absolutely would be more than happy having on your starters. They probably also can lead you to a conference title game, if not a college football playoff berth. For starters, let's go ahead and go give Brady Cook his flowers. Cook cooked last year. Did fly under the radar for most of the season, had a really good run game with Cody Schrader, had some really talented players at the wide receiver spot. Well, now nobody is going to question how good you are. Now the question is, can you cook, but cook to perfection? Maybe you were a little raw at times. Maybe you overserved a few moments, but can you be a perfect medium rare throughout the entire steak dinner, which is the college football season? You got the weapons. Arguably the best wide receiver in the sport, Luther Burden, is back. Arguably the best number 2 wide receiver is back in Theo Weiss. Mookie Cooper is flying under the radar as a number 3. Brett Norfleet does not get brought up enough. Can we please give credit to Brett Norfleet where he belongs? And do you have a good run game with Marcus Carroll and Nate Noel? I'm not saying you have an elite run game. I'm saying do you have a good run game? Because good might be good enough to be able to pull you over the top with this schedule. And Missouri, nobody is sleeping on, but nobody also is ready to give them their flowers just yet. Brady Cook them up a little bit. Let's also talk about Jalen Milroe. Milroe is my favorite of these three because I know that there is a potential to even expand past this, where we are talking about him as not only the best quarterback in the SEC, but the best quarterback in college football. You give him a day, he is going to understand Kalen DeBoer's offense. You give him a month, he's going to perfect it. You give him a year, he's going to master it. And so now you ask yourself, having the ability to have the entire offseason of learning the ins and outs about what he wants, being able to have the mobility aspect, being able to utilize his legs, and also build that relationship with the right wide receivers, because there's no more Isaiah Bond, there's no more Amari Niblack, there's no more Jermaine Burton. But now you get Ryan Williams, now you get Jeremy Bernard, now you get really decent tight end play. You also have a good run game. Can you build off that? Because the one thing I know about this offense is that even though there are going to be limitations at the very beginning of the season, it's not about how you start. College football is a marathon, ladies and gentlemen. It's about how you finish. Can you finish on the positive note, having everybody on the same pecking order going into Oklahoma before you take on Auburn in the Iron Bowl? Because if that's the case, you may be talking about making it to Atlanta and everyone's saying, the dynasty isn't over. It's just a new regime taking on its place. And lastly, and this is going to be a little controversial, but this is my take. These are my quarterback ratings, tier ratings, not rankings. Cool. It's Quinn Ewers. Quinn Ewers is going to have the most to prove to me this year because I know what the expectations are. I know what the upside is. I've seen him at his best. I've seen him at his peak. I've watched him march into the belly of the beast that is Tuscaloosa, Alabama on a Dixieland Saturday night and ball out. But you don't have Xavier Worthy. You don't have Adonai Mitchell. You don't have Jatavian Sanders. You don't have Jonathan Brooks. You lost Christian Jones. You have some pieces left and you brought in some new pieces, but it may take a little bit of time for them to all be on the same page. And you don't have time. You play Michigan in week 2. On top of that, you go to Red River, and that's always a toss-up. And right after that, you got Georgia coming on into your city. How prepared are you going to be for those games? Because it's not really about what you do in the games against Florida or Mississippi State or Arkansas or Kentucky. It's about when the lights are at your brightest, can you be successful? Because that's when everyone is going to micromanage you. That's when everyone is going to dissect each throw, each pass, each tempo, each rhythm. They're going to want to make sure that you have every understanding. I believe that Quinn Ewers can be a very successful quarterback in the SEC, but I'm not ready to call him the top passer just yet. Next category, Big Apple bound. One quarterback belongs in this list. One. And it's Carson Beck. Carson Beck is him. I don't think anybody has to wonder anymore. Can Carson Beck be the guy? Last year, everyone was talking about who is replacing the greatest quarterback to walk through Athens. I don't want to hear it. I don't want to hear that you love Matthew Stafford. Nobody has won 2 national titles at Georgia since 1980s. 4 decades. We've seen countless top-tier quarterbacks enter. And Carson Beck was a handful of plays away to making it back to the college football playoff. And be real for a second. Nobody was going to beat Georgia last year. Nobody. Alabama gave them their best run, and that was enough to keep them out of the postseason. I don't know if you go and sustain that type of success in round 2. They upgraded. They now have an entire offensive line that is still potent. They have a great defensive front. The wide receivers, yes, it does stink to lose Brock Bowers and Ladd McConkey. It hurts a little bit less when you bring in Ben Yurosek from Stanford, when you bring in Colby Young and London Humphreys from Miami and Vanderbilt. It doesn't hurt when you have Oscar Delp, when you have Dylan Bell, when you have a great running back in Trevor Etienne that now is going to boot, scoot, and boogie like Brooks and Dunn in Athens. He's everything that you want in a leader. He's everything that you want in a passer. He's everything that you want under pressure. And even in games where he looked bad, like games against Auburn and games against Bama and games against Missouri, when the moment was at its brightest, he delivered the crushing blow. He is the executioner. He is the judge. He is the jury. He is the reason why Georgia will once again be able to claim themselves as the state of the union of the SEC. But he's not my top quarterback. The Heisman. I've already told you guys this one before. I'm going down on this hill. I don't care how long it takes. I love what I've seen from him. It's year 3 in the system. Jaxson Dart is the best quarterback, in my opinion, for the SEC. Now, let's make this clear. Translating to the NFL and college football, drastically different things. Drastically different things. But from a collegiate standpoint, this year, when you go and follow the last dance mantra, the pieces aren't in play. The storybook ending is right there. All you have to do is dot a couple I's, cross a couple T's. Don't make an ampersand mistake. Put a period at the end, tie it up with a bow, and hand it on into the college football playoff committee. That's what Jaxson Dart can be. He has everything that you want. Accuracy, arm strength. He was one of the best quarterbacks when it came to downfield passes last year. If I'm not mistaken, he ranked in the top 5 of, the top 10 of passer rating, yards per attempt, yards per game. Oh, and on top of that, his touchdown ratio went up. His turnover ratio went down. His completion percentage stayed idly up. And it's now the same type of weaponry, if not better weaponry. You replace Dayton Wade with Juice Walls, who at one point was viewed as a 1,000-yard playmaker for South Carolina. You already have a relationship with Caden Prieskorn. Trey Harris was a couple of plays away from going for over 1,000 last year. The dude only really had a buck. That's how good he was. You have a running back room that, even though is questionable because you don't know who is the leader of the pack, doesn't mean it's bad. It just means it's questionable. And if you add all that together, it's a better offensive line and a better defense, and you're going to be on the brightest stage in the biggest moments. If you put up monumental numbers in that preseason god-awful schedule that people decided to say was worthy for Ole Miss to be scrutinized with, how do you not put him in that category? I believe that Jaxson Dart has all the intangibles of what you want in a quarterback that can eventually make it, not only to New York City, but also to a national championship. You can win a national title with Jaxson Dart in Oxford, Mississippi this year. And for my money, for my tier rankings, he takes the top spot. But let me know in the comment section down below, who was I too high on? Who was I too low on? What tier did you want to see moved? Did you like the tier names? Did you hate the tier names? Let me also know what you want to see next. Make sure that you also download the podcast version of the show wherever you get your podcast listening systems. TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, at Mr. Cole Thompson, at SEC Unfiltered. If you want to give us a follow on social media, make sure that also you check out all of our great work found at secunfiltered.com. I'm Cole Thompson. Until next time, folks, later.